Mega Man is a big franchise, and I mean big. Over 130 games plus comic books and extended materials, there's a lot of characters in it and there's a lot of interesting things to look at. But I wanted to focus on something simple today. I want to do a sprite translation of Sniper Joe. Now this guy may seem innocuous, but I think there's a lot more to him than you could give him credit for at a glance. He operates as kind of a generic enemy in most of the Mega Man games, but there is a lot more to him. So let's break down his sprite, talk about what makes him such a fascinating character, and see what he would look like if we could make him into a real robot. Sniper Joe is interesting for a lot of reasons. Let's talk about our basic themes here. Now, we gotta remember this guy is a Mega Man sprite. Key things. Mega Man, things are rounded. All the machinery, basically everything in Mega Man has these like curves and round points. Things are a little bit organic. They're that kind of Astro Boy science fiction. Now, for our purposes in this sprite, we're going to be leaning a little bit away from Astro Boy. We don't want to dig too deep into that, but we want to keep the basic visual themes. Because what we're trying to do is make a real robot. We kind of want to make him look more like a real robot. Now, something that's interesting about this guy is that he's only a robot because we kind of believe all the enemies in Mega Man are robots. They kind of have to be for the game's rating. But something about him is there isn't anything particularly mechanical about the way he is and the way that he looks. Most of the robots don't wear like this same kind of clothing. His boots are kind of different. He sort of has regular, just sort of dude boots. His gun, like almost all the guns in Mega Man are gloves. His looks like no exception. It looks like it's clearly just a gun you wear. And when you look at the concept art, he has another complete hand, which I guess isn't too strange for a Mega Man game, but we're operating on the assumption that he is a robot just for the purposes of this because the original game establishes it. We're not really going too far outside our wheelhouse for this one. We're sticking mostly to just basic material that we get from like main franchise games. We're not reaching out into extended material or anything. We're just looking at this guy, looking at the clues we get in universe to kind of figure out who he is and what he would look like. So one of the things I like the most about this guy, in the first game you just kind of run into one of them. He's just sort of arbitrarily out near some buildings and stuff. You just kind of see him. And he almost, now, for people who play a lot of Mega Man, he's just like some dude, right? You're just kind of Mega Man-ing along, and then you run into this guy, and you're like, oh, cool, it's kind of another enemy. When I played Mega Man as a kid, I thought this dude was a mid-boss. Because if you're not super proficient in games, he's really hard. Mega Man's a hard game to begin with. But this guy is really, like, until you get used to the way he fights, can really stop you up. Especially if you're a child, which is, you know, sort of the wheelhouse for Mega Man. Kind of designed for younger audiences. So when I played this game as a kid, I thought this guy was a lot more important than he was. But apparently he isn't. He's just kind of a generic dude. But that sort of adds a little bit more to him. When you look at this guy, you kind of got to think about what you see. First and foremost, he has a shield. He has a shield first. And if you look at it, the shield is even on his right hand. He's holding it forward. That's the first thing he's got. Mega Man comes up, and the first thing this guy does is put his shield up, as if to say you can't come forward. He can shoot you fast sometimes, but generally speaking, what he does is he tries to defend, and he tries to shake you off. Mega Man comes at him, and he tries to kind of scare you away with bullets and block and sort of jump around. And his AI is such that if you try to jump past him, he'll jump after you. He'll try to stop you from getting away, which leads, he's kind of like a defense type guy. He's not terribly aggressive. A lot of the enemies in the first Mega Man aren't terribly aggressive because they're supposed to be all modified versions of things that exist in society. So what is Sniper Joe? What is his standard purpose? He has a shield and a gun and a belt and a helmet. I think he's a cop robot. That's what I believe. That he is some sort of like police-tron that's meant to police the streets. Now, all the enemies in Mega Man, all the robots you fight, are supposed to have been enemies that have been corrupted by Dr. Wily. So they've been virused or something. They use non-specific plot device to make them work against Mega Man or try to stop him. But how that's actually done is very unclear. We don't know if these guys... I think they're a cop robot. I'm going to proceed forward with that assumption. As a cop robot, you have to wonder, do they have some sort of rudimentary sentience, the way Mega Man does, or are they just a baseline machine like RoboCop who just have all the different, like, directives programmed into their brain and they know what laws can be broken? And with that, maybe Dr. Wily just sort of went in and did some precision editing and just altered it around to whatever he needed it to be to make him work for make work for himself instead of for the good of society. Or it could possibly be that they're just manually controlled, like somebody just sort of downloaded a virus that let them just operate on top of this guy's brain to make him stop Mega Man. But I don't think that's the case. I think it has to be the first. It has to be the first, or maybe this third idea, that they haven't been reprogrammed. Maybe they don't know. We're in the midst of a crisis in Mega Man 1, right? All these different worker robots just kind of like go ape shit Donkey Kong and start destroying stuff and wrecking things and, taking over the world in the name of this evil scientist. And so how do you keep the peace in that? I don't know, but you could make a decent theory that the Sniper Joes are operating on like martial law. So they see anybody out and about and they're just like, you need to stand down, stand down, citizen, return to your homes, we're in a crisis situation. And I get that from the fact that they try to stop you before they try to fight you. They fight shield first, meaning either their directives have been changed so that they think Mega Man is some sort of offender, or, which naturally they would try to like detain and arrest him, or that they're actually just trying to get him to get out of the way and sort of stay out of danger in terms of a crisis, which is more likely because, like I said, they block you and they shoot at you when you get up next to them, but they don't run at you. They don't try to tackle you or attack you or tear you down. They fight very defensively. They fight like someone who's trying to get you to back off rather than someone who's trying to kill you. And I think that that's really neat. All right, so we've sort of gotten distracted here. Let's get back to the basics. We are talking about the rudiments of this design and what elements we're going to use. Naturally, we need to keep his shield. Shield has to stay. This guy is a defensive robot primarily, and we know that they all operate one side forward. So he's a little bit asymmetrical visually, and he might be asymmetrical in his actual schematic. That's probably spelled right. So asymmetry. We know he has a gun. We also know that he's primarily a defensive robot. We know that he wears kind of normal clothing. He's got a jumpsuit on, clearly, and he's got this helmet, which may or may not be his head. Based on the way his shoulders hunch up, it seems likely that it is, like, actually all part of his head. But he wears, this looks like kind of a biker helmet. He's got kind of a jumpsuit and a belt and boots. So we know his clothing is non-robotic. He dresses like a normal person, which leads you to believe that maybe he dresses down at the end of the day, or maybe he's designed in uniform. Something like that, but generally something non-offensive. So his design, all in all, looks the way you would want a police officer to look, which is non-aggressive. So let's move on from here. So I don't think we have to go too far from this guy's actual pose from the way we want to design him, but definitely we want to show off his full design. So we don't want to make it too covered by the shield. We don't want to draw him with just kind of his big riot shield forward, because then we can't see anything. That'd be a good action pose, but not for what we're doing here. So I think it's best to have him not holding his shield. So let's try maybe him standing. We'll kind of face him this way. He's just sort of like in action on duty. Put his gun hand up. No, we'll do it down. Make a nice casual pose. Every sprite of this guy is him in like a crisis phase where he looks like he's like frantically about to fight. So let's try drawing him nice and calm. He'll just be sort of standing. Keep these sort of basic Mega Man shapes. Very prominent kind of pelvis and chest. Less emphasis on the midsection. We know he has a belt on. How tall he is anyone's guess. Mega Man, because it is a heavily stylized game, we don't really know if characters are particularly tall or small. Some of them are definitely like much bigger than others, but it's very difficult to say what type of scale people have. But I imagine, because this guy is like a simple enforcer robot, that he would be built whatever medium height is, whatever the median is for like Mega Man Land. He shouldn't stand out. He should be visible, but he shouldn't stand out. He should look formidable but not imposing. He should look more like a security guard than a bouncer, which means capable but not antagonistic, not intimidating, just functional. And so that's where we're going to put him. So we're going to need to find some interesting details to do with his body and arms to really like sort of zhuzh him up and make him look make him look distinctive, but without going too far to the right and making him look crazy and over detailed. We want to keep him fairly simple. All right, and then for his other hand, let's put him out. Let's not. Maybe we won't have him actually with his shield strapped on. Maybe he's just got his hand on it. So this shield, compared to his body, that shield is pretty big, but it's not completely encompassing. So I would say it's probably about this tall. Let's see, let's look at the shape here. About that tall, and it's got a little bit of rounding, and then it's mostly big. It's really shaped like a riot shield. It absolutely invokes that same sort of visual theme. So let's have him just leaning his arm on it. This guy, he's off-duty. He's an off-duty robot. I don't know that robots ever go off-duty. It definitely implies, I feel like when I'm reading through like the text and stuff, it implies that Mega Man rests from time to time, so maybe these guys do too. Maybe whatever powers them, they can go into low power mode where they're not in full action mode, slow their reactions, weaken their muscles, or their servos, or whatever the robot equivalent of muscles are, so that they can have like a functional downtime where they're not in hype mode. Which, if you're a machine, it does have to be kind of relaxing. Even if you can function at full power all the time, a machine naturally has ups and downs. They're designed that way to sort of operate on low power mode sometimes, keep them from burning out. Maybe it's easier on his parts, but so he's just standing casually is my point. Here we go. So there's simple design. There's kind of his layout. We'll make his gun a little bit bigger. It's got to cover like his whole forearm. I don't really know why. Maybe it's just to like protect it. Since he is a cop, maybe he needs the ability to kind of block things that. So if he's fighting with his shield, maybe sometimes he has to baton people with his gun arm. That might be the case. So maybe let's keep that in mind. Maybe we'll reinforce his gun, as opposed to like Mega Man and Proto Man's gun, which is just sort of like bare bones kaboom, because they're a super fighting machine. His is probably built out of more basic materials, so it might need a little bit more like bracing to be effective. It's probably much weaker too, based on the fact that it takes him many shots to kill Mega Man. It takes Mega Man about 9 to kill him. I don't know, I haven't done the exact damage math, but it's a safe assumption that his gun is significantly weaker. And we'll still sort of center it out. Maybe we'll do more than one barrel on it. Just do like an upper and a downer. Maybe he's got like different settings, so he could have like a rapid fire gun that shoots like rubber bullets or something for suppression, and then he has like a lethal gun. If his programming determines like this is the high danger threat, like this is this is a big situation, he can switch over to lethal rounds, but then the rest of the time he would use like rubber bullets or like just sort of maybe salt bullets or something like that. I don't know, or maybe even something that's specifically good for stopping robots. Obviously, this is a world where robots are capable of hurting humans, so there may have been a necessity for that. I'm not sure. Not a whole lot of detail on the Mega Man world pre-Mega Man 1 as far as the games go. I'm sure there's extended material for them, but like I said, we're working with just the basics. We're just working with what we can kind of extrapolate from the games we have available, like the first couple of games there, and the things that I know about them. So let's look back at our sprite. Let's see sort of how on track we are. So he doesn't seem to have any kind of shoulder pieces or anything like that, so we're gonna bring that, make it into maybe like a jerkin, kind of like a simple. Oh, and we did forget, I was sort of going into my natural poses, we need to actually bring his head down a little bit, which definitely makes him look more machine, because he has a fairly prominent head because he's got this helmeted visor and his little light in the middle. So let's bring that in. We'll come back and do a little bit more with that later, but that'll give us sort of a starting point. In fact, let's make him not looking down so much. He looks real downcast. Let's bring his head up. And let's see. Now, it's hard to say if that connects when we look at it. If you really look at like this, let's see. If you really look at this right here, is it one big helmet piece? Or is it like a chin armor thing that goes over? I'm going to say chin armor. I'm going to say it's something like that rather than one complete helmet. Let's see how that looks visually, and then we'll decide how it looks, and if we like it, we can keep it. So if it was like sort of chin armor, it would sit right here, and it would kind of make sense because it would be a way to protect his neck, since this guy's obviously designed to be able to stand up to heavy combat. That's why he's got a big tower shield. So if he had a shield that covered, most of his body up to like his shoulder, then having this little this little extra armor for his neck, and then this helmet come down, and then he's sort of in there. Or actually, one eye, so he's sort of in there. That does add up. In that way, he kind of looks like an Armos from Legend of Zelda. Anyway, all right. So let's make that a neck piece, and then we'll make this. The actual helmet should go down almost the full way here, because it does look like it almost connects on the sprite. And then for his actual like faceplate, again, very simple. He just has an eyeball or a light or something in there, some kind of something. So what I think would be the best way to do it is to actually make him like cleanly faceless, and then we'll just put maybe like a zoop. You don't want it to look completely like an eyeball, because that would be sort of weird. But obviously there isn't a face in there. Since we're expanding this into more than just like a little eyeball visor, there's a little bit more to it. So let's go. We're going to get a little bit of ahead of ourselves here just to see if this will work visually. So if we make that the basics, imagining this is just like a dome. He's just kind of got his helmet, and then the inside of this would just have like all of the machinery and cameras and whatever it would need. This is like the back of his helmet. This is the neck piece. And but it just has one spot. That's the actual spot that the camera is looking, would light up the front of it. But the rest, so this is like safety glass, that just sort of covers. I'll just leave that over there. This is like safety glass that just sort of covers it. But let's look, because we don't want it to look like an eyeball, we need to see what this will look like when it's got a little bit of color on it. So let's get out of sync here, and let's just have a look. Whoop. And that's why you check your layers. Sort of whoop. I'm just kind of spitballing what color I might use. I know the rest of his color palette is green, so it would be somewhere in there, but we would want it to be kind of dark, and then we want to use a sharper green for the actual light to sort of show it standing out. And that sort of works. Let's see. Maybe we can put see what it looks like once we've got a little bit of shine on it. A little bit more of and then maybe a focal point on it, so it's kind of, yeah, that works. I like that. It looks really. I might square that off a little bit, but that's a good starting point for that. Let's zoom in a little bit here. Let's see. What do we want to work on next? Let's look at his sprite. What is the next piece of this guy? I think I want to do sort of his boots next. That's what I want to zoom in on here. I think there's something really interesting about the fact that he wears normal clothing. That's one of the things that really jumped me to this guy, that made me want to do a specific video on him, is the fact that he's dressed like sort of an average dude, which also might explain his name, which is Sniper Joe. Sniper, I don't understand. I can't. I've really tried to theory craft a reason why he's called that, because he doesn't do anything of the sort, other than the fact that he just sort of that they just sort of gave him a generic name. But Joe is naturally the name you give to nondescript people. That's like a go-to. That's like your Tom, Dick, and Harry for like background characters. Average Joe. That's literally the term. But one of the things that's weird about these guys is there's a ton of them. Like there's a bunch of variants of them, or maybe not variants. Maybe it's the same model that you see in like a bunch of different places and things throughout the games. They're like the go-to guys to like operate machines, or like there's all kinds of things of them in like little walkers and robots, and this is a little further in the series than we're looking at for the prime thing here. But what's interesting about that is it means they must have like reasonably advanced programming. They have to be like not completely super basic, because they can do that kind of stuff. Or maybe different models are programmed differently, but if they're all the same green model nondescript dude, then that just doesn't make sense from a manufacturing standpoint. You wouldn't make them all look the same and have the same equipment but then be programmed differently. That would be silly. So that leads me to believe that these guys are sort of higher end robots. They're well made. They have good programming. They have reasonable reasoning skills, and it falls along with my with the peacekeeping theory that we're working with from the beginning here. So these guys are higher end. It also explains why there's so much less of them. There's obviously a lot of small worker robots in the Mega Man world. We've got Metals and like other little generic dudes that are running around that presumably were designed to do mundane tasks from the beginning. But these guys don't come up as often, which tells me that they're a little bit less expensive. They're fairly effective. They're really good. If you played Mega Man, these guys are really good at getting in your way. So why not use more of them if you can? And the only answer I can think of is just because there's generally less of them. They're just higher quality, so you don't want to waste a bunch of them in the wrong place. You want to put them on choke points. You want to put them on bridges. You want to position them in places where they can get the most work done. Alternatively, is that they're in places where they can do the best peacekeeping, where they can choke people off and say, hey, it's dangerous past here, you can't come past, that kind of thing. If you're trying to police people and enact like a kind of martial law and keep people sort of on lockdown, you wouldn't just wander into a random street and be like, oh, you guys can't come through. You'd go to a major thoroughfare. You'd go to a place where you can really affect a lot of people. So it makes sense that they would position themselves that way. And also being there'd be naturally be more worker drones than peace officers. So it makes sense from that point of view too. You wouldn't have a whole ton of them. It may well even be that since these guys are on the defensive and try to do some sort of martial law, trying to keep people on lockdown, that a lot of them were just destroyed by Wily. That he took over and made his evil construction bot robots, silly plan to corrupt existing functional robots. But naturally, these guys would be some of the first casualties of that, because they would be the first responders to show up and be like, robot malfunction, robot disorder. A lot of them would be put down, and then you would have the guys who were left behind to man the blockades to keep people from coming through. Natural police procedure. You cut off routes for civilians to keep them out of danger, and then the SWAT team goes in to do stuff. These guys that you fight in the first couple of games, they would be those guys. They would be the blockade guys who are stuck trying to keep people safe. So, and that is why they have nice boots. I sort of got caught off on my tangent there, didn't I? But this is basically it. We're not going to do anything too much more than that. They'll have nice shiny police boots, and we'll go and maybe we'll do some more detail on that later. They don't look great, but that's the reasoning. Let's move on. His pants, we don't have to do a ton with. I want to emphasize his belt a little bit more. So one other thing that these guys do in some of the games, certainly not all of them, is they throw grenades at you. They'll throw little bombs and then duck down. What type of bombs is anyone's guess. I don't know if for that they would have a variety of them or just a simple one. They don't do damage to anything but you, so they might be little EMP bombs. They might be like specifically anti-robot technology, just sort of, which would make a lot of sense in a robot-based society, that they would have weapons that can take down a threat without harming any humans. Or maybe they're just grenades, and these guys are just like programmed to use. They look really just like a normal war, like, you know what I mean, like a cartoon grenade. They're very, very simple. So we'll do that. There's no reason to change that. Grenades are a simple design. We don't need to make a whole crazy thing out of it. But let's give him just for funsies, for our own conceptualization. We'll give him a couple of little like grenades on his belt, and then on the other side, let's just do maybe a pouch here. So he's got like reloads for his gun. I don't know what type of ammunition they use. I've seen designs of these guys from Mega Man games I haven't played, where they have little clips in their guns. I think they're like Machine Gun Joes or something, but that still leads me to believe that they need to reload their gun from time to time. It doesn't make sense to me to have a robot whose all of its weapons are powered by like its internal power source, because then it could shoot itself to death, or I guess barring that, like it could run too much and then not be able to shoot. Just seems inconvenient when you can carry bullets. So maybe he's got a couple of clips, and then we'll just put some more, just a little bit of bric-a-brac. We don't want to give it the whole Deadpool treatment and give him 1,000 pouches, but just a few little things. He should have utility because he's a, he has more that he's a multi-purpose robot, so he needs to be able to do a variety of things. The other thing I'm going to add to this guy, and this is really just me, because he's a simple creature and it's not truly necessary, but it's in my heart that I want it to be there, is I want him to have a little antenna. I'll find a good place for it. Maybe that'll annoy me by the end of it. We'll remove it. But I like to think these guys would need to communicate somehow in order to coordinate and get things done. So I'll give them just a little bit of an antenna there. It's likely that in the far-flung Mega Man future, you can communicate efficiently without that. Just sort of, you could use robot Wi-Fi to be just as functional, but I don't care. It's there. And then this glove, we'll do a little bit extra to it as well. Maybe it's got like some padding. Or actually, you know what? We don't know what the inside of this shield is. He probably holds it. It would be something simple. Maybe there's a strap. But since he's a robot and we're in the rock and roll robot future, maybe a handle because I don't know, that's probably just a necessity. A handle is a simple enough technology that it doesn't become outdated. But maybe in here we've got like a magnetic pad or something, like maybe an electromagnet, right, that can pin to his hand, and then on his glove would be a responding version of that. That way it can be fully attached to his hand. The way a big shield, there's like a couple of straps involved because they're big and they're heavy, even if they're made out of something lightweight, it's a little bit awkward. But if he could just like magnet socket it onto his hand and then grab the handle, that would be a really efficient way for him to be able to arm up very quickly and drop his shield very quickly if he needed to. I believe in some of the games you can knock these guys' shields off, so it would make sense that if you shot it enough, you could like damage the magnet pad in it, and then he would drop it. So that's a good little way to make sense of that with some fun sci-fi. So let's add that in. I'm gonna say they'll just be like kind of round, or let's make the whole thing round, because remember, we're Mega Man and things are very rounded, so we'll make it like a pad, sort of like that. Get a little bit bulky so it looks like kind of an arm piece, just like everybody else has on their arms in Mega Man. And then we'll keep his glove nice and simple, maybe just a little bit of just for funsies, maybe a little bit of like ballistic padding to pad his arm for when he takes impacts. It doesn't damage the probably finer motors in the hands. There we go. And then I'm going to clean this up real quick. Alright, so that's a good starting point. I think that's plenty of detail. Something I was thinking about while I was sort of working on this is this little magnet grip thing would also be a really good way to keep people from like stealing these. Like if the Sniper Joe dropped it or had to like jettison it or was killed on the line of duty, such as it is for a robot, it would be really difficult to pick this thing up and use it for anything except for like very awkwardly kind of holding it in both hands. So the little magnet thing also makes for like a good security device. You would need like the proper implant or proper arm piece or proper machinery in order to be able to use it, which means it would be mostly accessible to other Sniper Joes, which is kind of a nice little aspect. That's a nice a part of the machinery. All right, so let's look at his arms next. So this guy's sprite, we're looking at something real simple. He just wears a nondescript black. It's the same thing as his boots. Which tells me it's probably intended to be the same material, but I don't think I would like it to be. It should be a little bit different just because boots should be a different sort of, maybe the boots would be sort of soft leather because they need to be a little bit, well, I guess they both need to be mobile, but the boots would need a harder leather just to be more durable. His clothing is probably more, a different kind of durable, more like sort of a Kevlar type situation to protect him from gunfire or melee attacks or whatever it is, whatever the main threat in the Mega Man society is that they need riot cops for. Whatever the main threat is that they need riot cops for. I don't know, that was hard to say. So we're going to make it fairly simple, but I think I want it to have like a little bit of texture built in so that we know that it's kind of like some kind of rough material. Just a little something here to give it some more life, to keep it from being just like a nondescript black. Yeah, that looks pretty good. There, sort of there. A little bit of something, and then we'll add it slightly into. That sort of looks like fur, doesn't it? All right, let's break a little simpler. Let's go even more basic. All right. Dun, 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 dun. There we go. I kind of like that. When we go into colors, we'll probably dull this down even more, but it gives us a good consistent visual indication of what type of material we're working with, that this isn't just lines. It's not the same stuff as his overshirt here, which presumably this overshirt is made out of something. It's just sort of uniform cloth, and then he's wearing more of this underneath. It makes the most sense just looking at his visual design that he's wearing that black underneath his whole outfit. And it just because he's wearing a vest. But obviously he would need more padding everywhere. Probably his internal parts, if you could see them, would be sort of like, he would have like his just sort of like metal pieces in here at like the most basic level, like all the basic machinery in there, and then on top of that would probably be like an energy core and like bits and parts and robot lungs. I don't know what pieces robot needs. And then layered over all of that, you would probably have like plates, like little chunklets of armor underneath like this over Kevlar. That would all be just underneath, sort of layered into his robotic machinery. These guys are high-end robots, so they can have kind of layered parts. They're built, they don't have to be super efficient because they're well made. Or I should say, they don't have to be super cost efficient. A machine naturally needs to be efficient, but he can be a high-end machine. This guy is a Ferrari of robots, not a he's not a metal that's just sort of mass produced in like a factory, just sort of welded together and sent out, and if it breaks you just kind of you repair it if you got the parts, but if not you throw it away and order a new one. This guy would need to be a good machine. It would also make sense because at a certain point, if there were robot cops, we would have had to have the RoboCop moment where the public was sold on the idea of robot police officers. And as we know from humans, humans are not trustworthy of machines. This society is obviously one that almost completely relies on them. They do almost everything. But it can't have been that forever. There must have been some resistance in the beginning. So the first time these robots were made, the first time robot cops were made, they must have had to have been top of the line in order to just persuade people to use them. And maybe, since our story is about two scientists who primarily make robots, that might be part of their backstory. They might have gone through the trouble of designing these guys to begin with. Truly, it would explain why they look so much like Proto Man. And I'm sure I'm not the first person to make that kind of observation, but these guys really look like Proto Man. They've got the helmet's like the same sort of size and shape. They've got the shield. Proto Man obviously has a face that makes him a little bit different. But just overall, when you look at the two sprites next to each other, it really looks like Proto Man was made out of one of these guys. In the backstory, as I remember it, is that Dr. Light took an existing robot and heavily modified it with like better weaponry and like an advanced power source and so on. So all kinds of stuff to make it the most badass robot. As far as I know, there's nothing in there about upgrading his AI to make him fully sentient. So that would also follow along with our theory of these guys being functional decision-making machines to begin with. And if you were gonna make a robot peacekeeper to help sort of defend the world, or whatever Proto Man was originally for, if you were gonna make that machine, it makes the most sense to make him out of a robot that already understands, is already built in with like empathy for humanity and like a desire to protect and help them. So it seems very likely to me that a Sniper Joe is actually what Proto Man was made out of. That's just speculation. I don't think that's confirmed anywhere. I'm sure it's not. In fact, it's a little bit too wild into fan theory territory, but I'm going to stand by it because this is my design, and in my version of this world, in our design world, we can design things to be anything we want. We can decide what they are and what they're made of. So as far as I'm concerned, Proto Man is a hyper-advanced Sniper Joe. I should also explain why he uses a shield. You could also, if you really wanted to like step around that theory, now that I tell you, like you could put a quick hole in it and say that when Proto Man, again, correct me if I'm wrong. I remember Proto Man, the idea being that like Proto Man was like non-functional, and then Dr. Wily fixed him. He like gave him the parts he needed to survive, and he gave him like because he was like a weak machine, so he gave him like the shield and like a new reactor or something. So maybe he already had the programming to use a Sniper Joe shield, so he just gave him like a more advanced one, like the Proto Shield is like a better one. But his, like when you describe his frail constitution, it sounds like he's one of these basic robots. And when you go in with the idea that he is a he like had these extra things given to him. It might be that he was a simple machine, and then like spare Sniper Joe parts were used to enhance him. So if he was like originally a Megaman style robot that was just a really basic drone, it could be that Dr. Wily used this combat robot, which he already knew how to like build and modify. He knew how to build this robot effectively. He used these parts because it's what he knew well to get in there and enhance him. Meanwhile, stealing all the secrets of how Dr. Light made a badass, high-end combat robot that can tear up the Sniper Joes by the thousand. By the dozen. I'm going to say by the dozen. Sniper Joes are pretty tough. If you had to fight like 10 of them on one screen, they'd probably kick your ass. All right, so let's go in here. You know what I think? I don't think we need those outer lines. I think this helmet works best if we just have a light in there. Let's look at this same idea. Oops, we want to keep that color. Let's put that over here. Let's keep this same idea, these same colors, and let's just try this. Boom. We put like a central, whoop, so we can kind of see where he's looking, and then we use just some dirty airbrush to kind of like make it glow. And then we fuzz it just a little bit. Where's a nice soft brush we can use here? Let's fuzz it just a little bit. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. So that's a face right there. Very cool. Okay, so there's his arms, there's his head, there's his belt, there's his pants. This is pretty much everything on the design. There isn't really too much to it. So I'm going to do some cleanup here, and then we'll go for color. You know something that might be interesting? If we look at, I kind of made his clips this size. I just sort of did it arbitrarily. I didn't really have anything in mind with that, but there's actually something nice I think we can do with his gun. His gun has this little thing here. It's got this little spot, presumably like a little ammo counter or something, or maybe it's just supposed to be part of the machinery, but I want to actually use that for something. So let's look at this gun a second time. Let's do another little design round on this bad boy. First of all, I do want to square this off. I want to square this off a little bit because on his sprite it has this very prominent sort of like barrel sticking out, and I don't want it to be one big cannon barrel. I'd like to stick to the earlier like multi-barrel idea, so I want to put a little bit of a square in there just to represent that from the sprite, but I don't want to do too much with it. I'm not really that focused on it as far as how this whole thing goes. But so I made these square clips. What if, because obviously he doesn't have a clip like coming out the back or the top or the side of his gun. What if they actually loaded in flat? So if I use that same kind of size and just sort of like made it a square, just sort of do it like that, ka-chunk and then ka-chunk, and then maybe it'll still have little sort of notches to show how much power's in it. So let's look at that. So that's the square, and then the clip, I'm getting excited now. So the clip is just like this. It's a little brick, right? And it's a little energy cell that connects, and then on top of that is this thing. So let's put like one more little outer square to show that it's like a socket. There we go. Ooh, maybe not a big square, just a little side and side. That's where it like clips in and out. So since he has to use like use a shield, it has to be really easy for him to reload his gun. We wouldn't want him to have a whole like series of mechanisms he has to pull and like move a clip in and out. It should be something that he can just like plug and play and there's his gun. So what if his clip it ejects, like it's a perfect square, just like a battery slot, and it just ka-chunk and throws the clip out when it's done, and then, wrong layer, and then he can just sort of let go of his shield and, use the little magnet to let go quickly, and he can grab one of these little square clips off of his belt, which is all of the basic components, and then he just loads it right in, just ka-shunk, just drops it right in, and it snaps into place. And then that's how he gets his gun reloaded. It's a nice little detail. How that works in with multiple types of ammo is anybody's guess. Maybe he has different types of clips he can switch out, or maybe there's another one on the backside, so he's got one barrel loads into this barrel, and the other one's like on the back here, and it loads into this second barrel. I'm not really sure, because remember, we know his hand has to be in there too, so there can't be too much machinery. But yeah, so I like that idea, and I'll leave that in, and maybe it'll have like a lighting thing, so there's like a quick gauge of how much power he has. Or no, there really wouldn't be, would there? Why would he have that? Because he is a robot. He'd have his own, he'd be able to plug into it, and he'd naturally know how much is in it. So maybe we'll leave these notches in here just for detail, just to add a little bit of like visualness to it, to show sort of where it is and make it kind of stand out from the rest of the arm. But yeah, no lights or anything. He's a robot. He can just detect it. Okay, there we go. Perfect. And that's a pretty good. We've pretty much got the basics covered here. So let's go. Let's look at some colors now. His color palette is utterly simple: white, green, black. He's an NES character. It's not going to get more nuanced than that. So green will be our dominant color. White will be kind of our secondary, and maybe we'll find a tertiary color along the way. But we want to use this main green when we go into lighting. So this is a way too bright to be a primary color. Okay for an NES game, not okay if we're trying to make something look real. But we want to stay in the same range. It's a very bright, aggressive green. We're going to stay kind of on the same area of the palette. Maybe bring it down to like there. We don't want to do quite olive drab, but we want to go a bit. There we go. There's like a good starting point. Let's get these out of the way. There's sort of a good starting point. So let's do his clothing kind of in this. This is the base color, and we'll go probably a little bit darker from here. These guys still not bright enough to be like rave neon, but they would definitely want to stand out, because just same reason you put police in blue, like you want a distinctive color to make them stand out to other people. So that's a good kind of basic color to sort of show what they wear. And then we have white. We're not doing dead white. We never use dead white. We want to go sort of in that direction. There's like a nice sort of pale green. Let's go a little bit further, a little bit more. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. So this is a sort of creamy gray based on green. If you look at the palette here, if you can see my pointer, we went from this bright green, a little bit darker. We're all in the same kind of close range. And then we leaned over into white. So let's give this white a try and sort of see what it looks like. This very sterile. Here we go. This sort of sterile white, and that looks good. It's a little bit minty, but it fits nicely with with what we've done here. So we use white there. We use white there. Now the outside of his shield is white. We know that. I don't want to do that with the inside, and the reason is thus: it's blinding. It's not truly necessary. We're just going to leave it. We're still going to use we're going to put a little bit of white around his like body and belt. Maybe we'll make that belt buckle metal, but just to add that, because it's our secondary color, we want to put it in on some of his kind of pouches and things. And why not his grenades? It's a nice secondary color. I think it works well. So his helmet is the same color of green in the basic sprite, but I'm going to chalk that up to just the basic nature of it. So I want to use a slightly different color for this helmet. We're going to go maybe a little bit more washed out, because I want this to actually be sort of armored. Naturally, when we get metallic colors, are a little bit more into like grays and things. Now, of course, you could paint metal that same bright green. There's no reason why you couldn't. There's nothing that could stop you, but this looks a little bit more like metal. It's nice visually. It's pleasant. This is a color of convenience, not a search for perfect realism, but it does look nice. It's a good blend, and then we can use that, since we don't want to use heavy black on absolutely every part of this guy. That's our metal color, so we can go over here and we can actually use that on the shield as well. That's probably made out of the same or a similar metal, or even if they're just both made out of metal. There's no back of the shield. We're just going, yeah, there we go. We know it's back there. Even just because they're both made out of metal, so they probably use the same color paint. just to spray them both in. There wouldn't be a good reason to differentiate them, so we're not gonna go through the trouble either. White, white, white. All right, and then black is our other color. Now, just like working with dead white, you never work with dead black, or you try not to if ever you can, unless you're trying to make a real specific point with it. So we want to go into a dark color that is still on our same green palette. Let's see what we get. We get kind of this. Or what we can do, let's try, remember the way we do colors, you go colors next to the one you're using is one way of doing it, and the other method is to go opposite. So from green, if we go all the way to the other side, we get like this color. Looks a little weird at a glance, but let's see what happens when we make it a nice dark gray. See if that warms things up a little bit. See if we get anything extra out of it. It's not much, but I do think I'll keep it. It just sort of warms the palette up a little bit. It's a lot of cold. Green isn't necessarily a cold color. Green can kind of run the spectrum, but the colors we've chosen here are a bit cold, and this gives a nice sort of contrast. It won't totally kill us visually to go opposite and do a complementary color. So let's do that. And there's a little buckle right here. Let's sneak some more white. Actually, maybe, yeah, we'll make this whole little belt section white. Good there, good there. We need a metal color, and maybe we'll do that on this side too, since we're working on opposites. We need a metal color. We need a real sort of basic, simple. This is a little bit into that purple still, so it looks kind of dead gray, but it's got just a tinge of metal color in it, and that'll make it a little bit more visually pleasing. Maybe not at a glance. It's not something that's completely obvious, but it's something you sort of pick up on when you stare at something. It'll be pleasing, and your mind won't always know why. Let's use this cloth color and get in here. And you know what? I'm kind of coming around. I think I might use this same cloth color to do his arms, even though we said we weren't gonna. Maybe we'll sort of break that rule. I'll just make this a metal pipe too. No reason to. Or actually, how about some more of this white? There we go. Getting kind of a stormtrooper vibe from this now. All right, let's just see it. This is the boot color. This is the arm color. It'll be visually symmetric, if nothing else, even if it's conceptually a little odd to make his boots and his sleeves the same. But yeah, see, that does look nice. Let's use it. Let's do it. No one can tell us how to color. We're in design land. Our purpose is to make it work, not to make it perfect. There we go. There we go. Nah, I like that. All right. I came around on it. It's good. All right, and that's our basic colors. That's our basic character. That's our design. Not too flashy, not too crazy, but simple, cool Sniper Joe. And that's going to be it for this design workshop. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you liked doing a little bit of theory crafting with me. Catch you next time. Goodbye.